say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
Just reflect a little more on the way that world leaders thus far have responded to the crisis.
Well, there's the period when I and other health experts were saying...
I never knew he was a health expert.
I and other health experts...
Does talking with your hands make you more believable? Thank you to CG84110 on Twitter for sharing this with me. I think it was you. I'm pretty sure. This is from Bill Ryan from Project Camelot and Project Avalon. But it's from 2010. And he talks about the Anglo-Saxon mission. And he says this came from a source from a 2005 meeting in London. I'll leave a link to the full video and also a link to the transcript from his interview that he's referring to. This video is 49 minutes. He's pretty long-winded, and he offers a lot of speculation on top of it, so I cut most of the long-winded parts out and just tried to present the information from the meeting. Some of the things he says haven't come true, but some have, and that's why my ears perked up when I heard this.
This is Bill Ryan from Project Camelot and Project Avalon, and the date is the 16th of February 2010. I'm taking the step of making a video on an audio interview which we did with an important witness who came and reported his story to Project Camelot a little while ago, about a couple of weeks ago. Our source attended a number of meetings with senior Masons, and while many of these were interesting, they were routine by City of London standards. They were discussing financial affairs and so on and so forth. And then in the June 2005, he attended another meeting that he thought was going to be a routine meeting, but actually this was something rather unusual, and he realized it was unusual as soon as he arrived. He says that he felt it was an accident that he was there. He shouldn't really have been there. He didn't know what was happening. They were about 25 or 30 people there, including senior politicians who most people in the UK would recognize by name. I do not know who they were. He didn't name them, and I didn't ask them, but he said these are well-known names. The chief of police was there, representatives from the church, representatives from the military, 25 or 30 people. What they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago, and what they were discussing was they were discussing the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going. The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem. Even back in June 2005, they were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. They were talking about China and how powerful China was getting, both militarily and financially, very quickly, and that the Japanese weren't doing what they were supposed to do, which was to interfere in some way with the Chinese financial system. They weren't doing that, and this was another problem because China was getting too strong too quickly. Other things that were discussed were, for example, the coming financial crash, the centralization of resources, everything that we saw starting to happen in October 2008. They were planning that and referring to it in their meeting in June 2005. There was clearly a rollout of some plan here. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. Now, this hasn't happened yet. That's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. He heard this being planned in this meeting. This is being choreographed. It's like the script for a movie. This is exactly what's intended to happen. In this rollout of this crazy scenario where it is intended that there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, the idea is that as the world looks upon this with horror, then they will demand from their governments that there are heavy controls over travel, over communication, over people who meet, over people who protest in the streets. They want to make sure that they don't have crazy bombers on aeroplanes, crazy bombers in the shopping malls. They want to make sure, and because people will be driven into fear by this, they'll request and demand and insist on heavy controls from their governments, which will be justified. And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries. It's intended as a justification. All of this is just the start of something, because this story gets much bigger, and it's pretty horrifying. During the time of this ceasefire, everyone's shocked, everyone's frightened, everyone's really terrified about where this is going to go. There are all kinds of heavy controls over populations everywhere. And then the next thing that happens in this chess game that's being played is that biological weapons are released on China. You heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. It's racially targeted against the Chinese people. It's designed to spread like wildfire and to knock out a large number of the Chinese people. And these people in this meeting were laughing about this. They said, China will catch a cold. Those were their words. China will catch a cold. And they were laughing about the fact that these biological weapons will wreak havoc among the Chinese population. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. Our source was not clear whether this was a Chinese retaliation or whether the thing would just spread out of control in the way that it would be very understandable if it did, whether it's racially targeted or not. These things actually mutate. So now you've got a situation where there's been a limited nuclear war in the Middle East. There's a pandemic that really is sweeping across the world and really is killing people very visibly. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western world because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts. Something that would be justifiably called the Third World War, with a much more major nuclear exchange. And at this point, I asked him, is this just about population reduction? What is this about? Why are they doing this? Why this insane Dr. Strangelove plan for just unleashing all of this stuff on the world? Why do it? He said, absolutely, it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. Half the world's population. This is planned as per the Georgia Guidestones. For those of you who don't know what the Georgia Guidestones are, it's a stone monument in Georgia in America that was erected anonymously a number of years ago. It's in 8 languages, and it's like an Illuminati manifesto for a new world, as it were. And just hold that thought about this being a manifesto for a new world. This is an important concept here in what I'm presenting. One of the key parts of this manifesto for this new world is that there should be a population of 500 million people. Now, 500 million people is an enormous reduction from the nearly 7 billion that we've got at the moment. That's pretty much 95% of people who would no longer be on this planet. And 50% is a step towards that. And there's a reason why they're doing all of this. There's a reason why they're in a hurry. There's a reason for this insanity. And when he was explaining this, then he said that they have a name for this plan. This project has got a name. And I said, well, what is this name? He said it is called the Anglo-Saxon Mission. The Anglo-Saxon Mission. Now, I'd heard that before. It was something historical, I think, to do with the Crusades quite a long time ago. But I hadn't heard it in the present day context, and neither had he. The plans that I've been describing are definitely a possibility because he heard them with his own ears in this meeting. So the sequence is as follows. The planned sequence is as follows. Israel attacks Iran, then there's a ceasefire, then during which time there is heavy governmental military controls over populations in all Western countries. Then China is attacked by a biological weapon. It's a flu-like disease that spreads like wildfire. This goes all over the world, and then they have a major Third World War. And then, by this time, 50% of the population will be destroyed.
And that's about the gist of it. There's more if you want to go watch it, but it's long. And a lot of it hasn't come true. But you know, plans change. And I thought what has come true was worth mentioning. Oh, and one more thing. You know this ID 2020 thing they're trying to pull? I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but check out who their board chairman is. Dr. Gary Connell is a former prime minister of Haiti and was previously director of the African Regional Office of the UN Office for Project Services. In the wake of Haiti's 2010 earthquake, Dr. Connell was chief of staff to former U.S. President Bill Clinton in his role as special envoy for Haiti, where he helped coordinate Haiti's reconstruction efforts. Just another coincidence.
We see a lot of things that are going very well, things like reducing childhood death and improving the nutrition.
Fucking stoned.
I got